Okay, we're now going to move on to our next session of the morning, which is going to be looking at creativity and specifically how creativity can win in a technology-driven world. How can it be used to unlock tech-driven opportunities for businesses? So I'm delighted to welcome two people to the stage who are going to speak about this a little bit more. And please put your hands together for Mark Darcy, who's Chief Creative Officer for Facebook Creative Shop, and Iain Tait, who's Executive Creative Director at Wieden and Kennedy. Welcome them to the stage.
Morning.
Hello.
Very nice to be here. So we were looking at this question as we were sort of preparing for this, and the first thing we talked about was the fact that why we're having this conversation in 2018. And I think when I look at the question, so how can creativity win in a technology-driven world, I think I spend most of my day, and I bet Iain does too, flipping the question as to how can technology thrive in a creatively driven world. And I think the tension between the two is what we want to talk about in the next half hour or so. So for you, like, why are we still having this conversation? We've both been doing this for a long time. Why are we still having this argument, or this false argument of the two things being in competition?
I think what happened was there was a sort of almost like a false thing at the beginning that was set up as a bit of a defense mechanic, where lots of people from sort of existing creative industries were a bit like, this feels like, all this tech stuff feels like an affront to my creativity. It feels like the things were set up in opposition. So it's like, if you look at, you know, what it used to be a creative director in an advertising agency, it was all about your personal instincts and your feeling, and like, I'm right, my gut feeling is correct, and you know, that's what you were buying into. And almost all this other stuff around it, like data and things like, well, if they're right and I'm wrong, then my stock price just kind of crashes. So they were so resistant to that stuff, and you know, it's been a crazy kind of artificial opposition that's been set up. And I think, you know, the nature of what it means to be a creative just has fundamentally shifted. And I think you'll see the difference between people who are able to make that transition or who've never had to make that transition because they started, you know, much more recently. Yeah. And I think that's kind of how the industry is now shaking down. It's either, you know, and the people who've decided that they're going to set themselves up in opposition to it, like, their days are numbered.
Yeah, it's not going to look very good. And you do see it, I mean, with new companies like the guys we just saw,
yeah,
they don't even think twice about the way they talk about using technology to fuel their creativity. It's integrated into it. Yeah. One of the things we were talking about too, and I think about this when someone who's been doing creative things for a long time, is when we started out, being creative was a very small subset of a small industry in the corner of a Soho or Madison Avenue, whatever. So what we literally did was very strange. So if you were talking to someone about, I was at a photo shoot or I was making a film, there was a very small protected creative class that had that feeling of superiority. And now, for all of us, our audience is making far more than we are. So when they look at our work, or they look at our photography or our writing or our editing, they have not just a point of view of an audience, they have a point of view of a creator. And I think that, again, is a very unnerving thing for someone who has built their career with their gut being better than everyone else, and actually opening up and saying, wow, there's actually amazing things going on. I need to connect with that world.
Yeah, I think there's something interesting in that, which is that, you know, the things that we used in agencies that we used to have that were special aren't special anymore. Like, we don't, it's not that we have access to better people, or, you know, that we can find better kind of creators to partner with. Like, all that stuff's just out in the open now. So I think we've had to start to look at, okay, what is it that you get from coming to a creative agency versus, you know, being out there and doing it yourself or having an in-house department. And I think, you know, all of that is kind of up for grabs at the moment. But you're absolutely right. The means of production have become accessible, democratized, and actually, you know, it's interesting that, you know, I think in sort of some of the more antiquated agencies, like, creatives have never been making less. You know, when everyone around them is just making more, putting more stuff out there at a you know, a really high quality.
But why though? Production costs are lower. There's more screen surfaces, canvas to create. Why do you think it's slowing down?
I think it's a combination of, you know, I think there's some clients that are also struggling with making that change, where it's like, we still need to be in control of things. And I think, you know, I'm fortunate to work in a relatively lean agency that sort of has always been quite comfortable with kind of chaos and change. Whereas I think now if you sort of assume the whole world is very chaotic and kind of changing very quickly, and you come from a culture of wanting to have certainty and control, actually just putting stuff out there and seeing what happens is just like, it's terrifying, you know. Especially now, you know, you look at, there's lots of brands that are so nervous about even one noisy person kind of speaking up and saying, I hate that thing. You know, we'll put a thing out and it's like, if the first 2 comments of people going, I don't like this, then it's just like, oh no, batten down the hat, should we take it down? And it's like, no. The whole reason this platform exists is to allow people to say what they think about what you're doing. And
to learn from it.
And you know, and I think you see brilliant examples there of people putting stuff out in a limited testing way to sort of dip their toe in the water and see what it's like. Whereas I think in this kind of the old way of doing things, it was all about like a big reveal at the beginning of the campaign and a massive surprise, and you know, that is ridiculous. Right?
Yeah, and I think that production, that creative cycle of long development and then release, you know, this agility model that Google's talked about and we talk about a lot, this idea of looking at software engineering on this constant evolution, iteration approach to creativity is something you see here across multiple platforms, and I think we're seeing more in advertising. Are Wieden doing that? Are Wieden and Kennedy approaching it from a different way, or with some clients or other clients? How are you approaching that?
It's funny, I think, you know, and I'm overly simplifying just for effect, but it's kind of like there's 2 kinds of clients in the world, obviously massively simplified, and there's the big kind of global clients that require certainty, that have loads of stakeholders, that need the same campaign to run in lots of places, and they require lots of account management, lots of strategic rigor, like all of those things, and you know, they're still the ones, you know, for lots of big agencies, they're still the ones paying a lot of the bills. But here's the thing, like lots of creatives don't want to work on that stuff anymore because the time to a campaign going live, you know, I have people in the agency working on things that aren't going to see the light of day until 2019, which, you know, for them it's like, I'll have had 3 jobs between now and 2019. Like that's not a good use of my time. And then you have those clients over there still paying large retainers and chunks of money to people, God love them. And then over here we have new clients that are making lots of stuff, and that, you know, they want to be highly collaborative. You know, they'll turn up at our door and go, hey, we've got an all-in pot of, you know, less than a few £100,000, and that's for production, media, fee, everything all in one. And by the way, we've got 6 weeks. And the machine that you need to service those people is entirely different from the machine that you need to service the more traditional clients. So I think we're sort of operating with almost like 2 different kind of machines inside the building, and you know, trying to figure out what you can learn from one and kind of give to the other. But I think we've made a bunch of, you know, we failed a bunch of times trying to impose the old system on those new clients because they don't want to wait around.
They actually push people aside. They push resources away.
Exactly. Yeah. No, there's definitely, you know, and from the other side of the table, I spent a bit of time working at Google, and you know, you'd see the habits of agencies where they bring loads of people into a room, and you're like, what do all these people do? And not only you're aware that you're paying for all these people, but there's just a sense that like the more people you have, the more kind of wind resistance that creates, and you want lean, nimble kind of teams. And so, you know, I used to joke when I went back agency side, it's like, I think some of these people would pay more for less people. And, you know, it started out being a joke, but the more I think about it, actually, I think they're prepared to pay, you know, fast-moving tech clients are prepared to pay a premium to have less but better.
The right people.
The right people, exactly.
So to turn this into, I mean, optimism and thoughtfulness around how we do this. I mean, I have a very lucky job. I work around the world with a lot of agencies and a lot of clients. I generally get, and again, it's terrible to make commonalities around diverse groups of people, but the general sense I get from most of the senior clients I work with, particularly the large, complex companies that have been around for a while, is one of a great thirst to change. They are very curious. They want to know how to be organized. They want to know how to move faster. And what you're saying is that agencies can actually play a role in being a cultural shifter to that, on not just what is being made, but how it's being made. How do we encourage more creative people to move on from this false dynamic of competitive with technology and embrace it as just being a digital craft that they have to know how to express ideas in 2018? How can we do more for that? How are you doing more inside Wieden? Because I'm sure you have some creatives there who are steeped in awards and incredible reputations in one form. How are you bridging them over to embrace the now?
So I think there's couple of questions almost like embedded in that. So I think, and we see this as well, that there's I'm guessing you're speaking mainly to kind of very senior people up here who have like a real desire to push things forward and change. And you'll probably find kind of at the more junior end, like everyone's really frustrated. But there's a whole set of systems and processes in the middle that these groups of people at the top and the junior end, like they don't really care about those systems, but it's like the people in the middle are going, well, if I follow the system, I'm not going to lose my job next week.
Yeah.
So if I put things into pre-testing, if I do, if I follow the Millward Brown process, if I run 15-second TV ads in all my markets, like that's been proven to be a success. I'm not going to lose my job. Whereas these people are going, I want you to take more risks. I want you to take more risks. But none of those people, and I'd say on client side and agency side, like people aren't incentivized to take those risks in the way that they should.
You talk about this as de-risking. Every conversation, often it's a de-risking strategy. And so one of the things we heard in our previous speaker is the ability to use platforms, not just our platforms, but platforms generally, to become learning mechanisms.
Yeah.
And this is a big thing that we talk about a lot with creative agencies, that creative departments, marketing departments need to become learning departments, not expert departments. You need to be relentlessly using these platforms, not just to distribute, but to learn.
Yeah.
Are you finding that with your campaigns? Are you getting more ideas into the world more often to get more feedback, or is it still harder than you would like?
I think we're still getting, if I'm being very honest, I think we're still getting them out too late. I think there's a way of putting stuff out into the world much earlier on, because I think Wieden & Kennedy kind of has a reputation for being a very craft-driven agency, so we make beautiful things, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think craft and taste and doing the right thing are out of fashion. I don't think they will ever be out of fashion. They still make the difference between average work and great work. I think the problem is that you don't want to be crafting and making really beautiful things and then putting them out and then killing a few of them. You want to be kind of testing things out much earlier on with rougher prototypes of it. So we've put, 5 or 6 propositions out into the world and then gone, okay, which are the ones that seem to be resonating with people? Like, which audiences are right?
So it's a planning tool as much as anything.
Yeah, planning, or and I think there's an interesting middle stage, which is almost like creative prototyping, which, and I think that's one of those things where, again, if you're coming from an agency that values great design and craft, it's like, how good is good enough to basically to test?
How do you do that? How do you not have people recoil in horror?
They still recoil in horror.
Do they?
Horror. Yeah. I think people, I think the only way to get people to change in creative cultures is through people seeing that it makes the work better.
At the end, the final work product.
The final output, or even just the feeling that going through that is kind of fun. I mean, a sort of slightly dumb example from my past, when we did the Old Spice thing in Portland, I think, we did this campaign where we got this character in the Old Spice ads to respond to people on the internet, and I think the creative teams were very, very nervous about it. And then I remember after the first day of doing it, they came to me and they were like, this is amazing, this is such fun, we can hear the audience, it's like you can hear the audience laughing, and then we can write more jokes like that. And it was this thing of going, you've been kept in this sort of sealed box rather than...
It's literally like going live, like doing a concert.
Yeah,
You've made an album, now you're going to go and do a concert and you feel the crowd singing back to you.
Like Hollywood actors always want to go back to the stage and kind of, so they can feel the audience. And I think...
It's like the love we're getting right now. It's sort of what it's like, just like that.
Very similar.
Yeah.
But I think that is the thing. It's making it seem like fun, and it's playing to that sense of, oh my God, this is more fun and more interesting to do it this way. Like, I'll never forget when I very first joined Wieden's after working at digital agencies and met one of the most kind of legendary, I'm not going to say his name, but one of the most legendary creative directors that agency's ever had, responsible for countless amazing Nike ads, most of the Coke Super Bowl stuff that you would remember. I remember sitting and having a conversation with him about, why wasn't he doing more stuff, but why hadn't he ever done a digital thing? And I'll never forget, as he was talking about his ideas, he kept doing this. And I was like, what does this mean? And it's like, because he sort of thought of everything through this kind of, through a lens, right? But to me, it also meant that he was putting an artificial boundary around all his ideas, because he was programmed to protect the idea from outside interference.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that, a lot of really strong brands and a lot of really strong agencies, they've been set up to resist outside, people fucking sticking with who they are and what their ideas are. And actually now we're asking them to kind of go, hey, invite everyone in, and that's a huge thing.
So how do you protect the integrity? I mean, one of the things with producing a lot of things or being collaborative, which I'm a huge fan of and we do it every day, but it's protecting the integrity of the process so it doesn't turn to crap, right? So it's like, oh, that went horribly wrong because it turned from a collaborative structure to a committee, or the wrong people in the wrong room pushing the wrong guidance. How do you protect, I guess there's two parts of this. How do you protect your process through a collaboration? And how do you protect the brand from people putting landmines into the world that are actually genuinely damaging? Like, where are the guardrails of taste and also collaboration?
So I think the process bit, again, speaking from just experience of one agency, like most agencies I don't think are brilliant at process. I mean, most advertising agencies anyway. I think a lot of digital agencies are much better, they're much more buttoned down in terms of a process. I think we need to shift the things around in the process. So, I see us getting to a point where it's like, before we get things signed off by clients, the thing is almost perfect. And more now in terms of de-risking, we're almost getting to the finished thing. Yeah. It's like, we've made a mood film that basically looks almost exactly like the ad that will go out in the world. Like, every word has been like poured over to death. And it's like, and you have to get there before you even go to a pre-production meeting to kind of make the thing, which is ludicrous. And by the time you get to the end of the process, where it's been through, various internal systems, like, everyone's worn out. Like, they've got no love for the thing anymore, and they've got no energy left to fight the last bit to make it amazing. Whereas I think if agencies and clients can kind of come together and collaborate much more loosely in that early stage, test things out in the real world as you go along, by the time it comes to the last bit, you've actually got gas left in the tank to craft the thing brilliantly and have the kind of the friction that leads to brilliant work.
And also to keep up with culture.
Absolutely.
I mean, a lot of your work that I see around the world is very good at staying in the moment of culture.
Yeah.
That must be essential to have a faster system, faster cadence than that long development process.
Absolutely.
So we're going to Cannes in a couple of weeks. I think you'll be there.
I'm not.
You're not going?
No.
Good for you.
Thank you.
What do you think will be happening down there? What do you think it'll be? What's happening? What are you seeing as you're trying to work you're entering, or the things that people will be talking about, particularly in relations to technology and creativity, which is sort of the biggest conversation that will be down there as well?
So, I should have said this at the beginning. Like, I'm terrible at representing the point of view of an agency, and I'm much better at representing what I personally think. Hopefully, they're in line mostly, but this one probably isn't.
Speak your truth, Iain.
So I really, for years I've kind of worried about Cannes and what it represents, and I think more and more we're seeing things which are like, this is the kind of work that we'd like to be doing, getting celebrated at Cannes, rather than the work that's actually paying any of our bills. I mean, we had an awkward situation last year where a client called up and said, why haven't you entered my campaign into this? For those of you who don't know, Cannes is just a bunch of prizes that advertising people care too much about, rather than thinking about what actually real people think of the work. And we had a client say, why haven't you entered the work into these prizes? Are you not proud of it? And I said, I'm incredibly proud of this work, but it's not going to win any prizes in Cannes, because what the juries are looking for in Cannes is something completely different. I said, if you wanted to give us a brief that said win a prize in Cannes, I have no doubt we could be entering things into Cannes, but it's just a waste of money. At the moment, nobody is celebrating, like, apart from in the Effectiveness Awards, which I think, oddly, you have to have won a creative award previously to get into the Effectiveness Award. So there's no this work actually kind of shifted the needle and made a difference. So I think, we look at that sometimes and kind of go, all right. And occasionally you see the breakout bits of work where it's like, that was creative.
I think Old Spice did quite well, as I remember.
But I think genuinely, and I think we have some Nike stuff this year that might do okay. But we're looking at it where it's like, okay, first and foremost, that was a piece of work that the real world kind of liked, and then it's like, do we think a bunch of people in a room sort of being paid in rosé to tell us whether they think it's good or not, are they also going to like it? And so it's that weird Venn diagram that we try and strike that bit in the middle as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
But I'm not answering your question, am I?
No, it's just, I do think for those of you that aren't in the advertising industry, the idea of peer review, the idea of having a place at I think all the industries, whether it's the technology industries, the creative industries, are looking for lighthouses. They're looking for where are we going as a business? What is driving that forward? And I think the criticisms you bring up of Cannes, they've discussed themselves, which it needs to be far more focused. And I think our industries, no matter where you sit in the creative technology industries, need to be deeply focused in what's actually happening in the real world, not just the theory. Like, I think the theory and the prototypes are fine, but one of the things that creative industries generally, particularly advertising creative industries, we need to get much better at is scaling that, making our best work our best practice. We do something once that's good, then we need to make that the best practice at great scale and then improve on that and build upon it rather than constantly running into what's never been done before.
Exactly right. So I think that obsession with novelty is really damaging as well, right? So it's like, I've seen that idea before. It's like immediately things get slung out. It's like, no, what about evolving that idea to make it better next time around? And I think one of the other things that's really hard is, I remember a few years ago sitting in one of those rooms being paid in rosé tokens where, there was a real split in this group of people where somebody was we were being asked to compare Google Wallet with like an ad for some whiskey. And you're like, okay, one thing is sort of changing the future of commerce and the other one is a nice piece of cinematography. And you're like, how on earth are those two, like, how do you decide which one of those two things is better? And I think part of that, part of what makes it so difficult is just that confusion of like, what are we supposed to be doing? Which is, I guess, is why something like Cannes is still useful, because in theory, the things that rise to the surface are the things.
Push those things together, and those debates have been had. So you mentioned earlier you were at Wieden, you went to Google, you came back. What did you learn through the journey of being at a tech company? How different were you through that process, and what did you learn and what did you share with your colleagues?
I think speed, collaboration, being much more. It's oddly almost like the where I was in Google. It was like, because the pace is so kind of relentless. It's like, okay, this thing seems like it makes sense. Let's go and let's figure it out along the way. And so you'd end up starting to make things, and sometimes they wouldn't pan out, and you're much better at going, okay, this thing isn't working. Let's can it and move on with something else. Whereas I think partly connected to the people in agencies not making enough stuff, people are so protective over things, and it's like, this thing has to succeed, and it's like, it has to work. And it's rather than being able to say, okay, it seemed like it was going to work when we started out, but as we've started developing it, you know what, this thing kind of sucks. Let's just kill it. And so I think that ability to start making and learn through the making and through the crafting and through the releasing small bits of it and seeing
that agility and being prolific.
Agility, exactly.
And what inspires you about the industry? You obviously have a lot of choices about where you could be. You work at an advertising agency, a very, very good one.
Yeah.
But why do you? And what inspires you when you look out 2018, 2019, 2020? What are you most excited about?
I still think the amazing thing about working in a creative agency is just the diversity of problems that you get to see. So, probably similar to you, it's like, 1 minute you could be talking about detergents, and the next day it's sneakers, and then the day after that it's an app. And I think there's a weird. It's almost like a drug-like thing that you get.
You can be a little bit clever about many things across a vast array of topics.
A lot stupid about lots of
things. A lot, yeah,
well.
Constantly there.
It's funny. I've stolen this analogy from a clever planner at our place who had it applied to something completely different, but I just really loved it. They use the analogy of water balloons, and I think our industry right now is like a load of water balloons, and if you don't cling on tightly enough, they slip through your fingers, and if you cling on too tightly, they'll also slip through your fingers. And I think that's like finding places where they have this middle ground of just the instinctiveness to kind of hang on to your water balloons just enough so that you're kind of holding them. Just sort of feels like, in good agencies, that's the kind of the excitement that we've got at the moment. It's like, how hard do I cling on to what I've got, and how much do I let go? And I just think it's, I'm really excited to be at a place like Wieden's that has this sort of great history and going, and I'm sort of, I don't know, maybe egotistical enough to think I want to make that place an incredible agency for the next wave of kind of creative habits and techniques and audiences kind of going forward.
So one of the big parts of that is the makeup of that agency, not just the craft diversity, but also just the demographic diversity.
Yeah.
How are you working with that? Like, I think we've had, with the 6th white man on the stage this morning, how are you working to make the agency better reflect the people we're serving and connecting with. And it's a huge job in many industries. It's a really big job in creative agencies. What are you doing about it?
I mean, we're doing a number of things. I mean, I think we're doing all of the things that we should be doing, in terms of recruiting, in terms of where we source candidates from, like all of those things, making sure that, I mean, we have a very good representation of senior women in our creative department. But when I look at it, it's like we've grown a lot of those people internally because they've stuck around for a long time. I think, across the industry, there isn't enough of those people. So I think there's a few things. One is making sure that we're looking out for people and growing them brilliantly internally. I think one of the other things that we're doing beyond that is just changing how we collaborate and kind of assemble teams around projects. So rather than assuming that we have everything and everyone we need inside the agency, what we've started to do is cast specifically for projects at the beginning of the process, which we say, okay, this client's come in with this sort of problem. Who are the best people served to solve that problem? And they may not be people that we have in-house. So actually looking at bringing in experts from outside, partnering with other companies, and again, letting go of control a little bit. Yeah. And I think by opening that up, it means that we are able to, people who may not want to work in an advertising agency all day, every day, for whatever reason, we can bring them in and sort of make them a kind of a part of the team, which I think is opening up the potential to, bring back, returning mums who, don't want to come and work in an agency all the time, to, bring in people who might want to be part of another community, for the rest of their week. And I think that, that's really opened up sort of potential to us.
I couldn't agree more. I think these distributed creative networks, whether they're formalized or informal, it's like we're waiting for the diversity to come to the industry, and this really is the industry coming to the diversity and moving very, very quickly to make the work better and make the cultures better inside them. So, I mean, I think it's a really important thing. I have no idea what time. There's no clock. Are we nearly out of time? We're out of time. Good. Yeah, there's nothing. We will talk all day. We will get wine. We'll get some cheese. It'll be good. So I think we'll.
I think there was one last thing that we talked about, which I think is really important. Like a lot of people are looking at the creative industries and saying, actually, they're being optimized, right? So we're having all the time squeezed out of it. We're having a lot of the budget squeezed out of it. But I think it's just, oddly, to go back to a water balloon, I think it's just moving around inside the balloon. And I think in order to be able to create things at speed, very instinctively, to be able to improvise around your creative work, I think there's not actually a lot, but there's like some really high value sort of preparation work that needs to move to the beginning of the process, about creating design systems, about creating, really tight tone of voice, about guidelines, like modern, proper 21st century guidelines that help people know what's right or wrong for a brand, so that you can be agile and quick.
And you avoid the landmines.
And you avoid the landmines that you brought up earlier on. So I think from a point of optimism, I think there is still really great, important, high value work that creative companies can do for brands. It's just potentially moved around in the processes.
I think the last thing I'll add, and then we'll get on to the next session, is I think to create that culture, and you've talked a little bit about this, is the burden on clients to want to create that environment. Right, because you have all these people, all these different people with their platforms or agencies, it doesn't matter. They all want to serve you. But if you don't can create a construct, a collaborative construct that has a quality and has a fairness to it and a decency to it, that people can collaborate, they'll be paid, they'll be looked after, you're not going to get the best out. I had a very senior client the other day say, how can we get better work out of our agencies? And they're a big multi-billion-dollar company. And I said, are you the best client at those agencies? Are you the one that says to those teams, we want you to do the best work of your career? How can we be a better client? What are we doing? And the answer was no. And so, well, it's a pretty easy way to start the process of building a culture that will enable these people who are desperate to do amazing things to do them for your brands. And it's just taking the time to build those systems, build those processes, and build those relationships that you're going to get the best out of where you're investing all this money. So on that optimistic note, we'll leave it. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.